You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about exciting, creative, and innovative ways of living. Produced in Santa Barbara, California, Sustainable World focuses on positive solutions to environmental challenges, solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe, how to plant a food forest, restorative design, or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned to Sustainable World Radio. I'm Jill Cloutier. So Warren, over the years, I've heard of you and the projects that you've been spearheading or involved in, and you've always held my interest. I've always been interested in what you've been doing. And I remember meeting you years ago when you and Cindy, your partner, were running a program for teens at Transition House. And I think that was the beginning of Wilderness Youth Project, possibly?
Correct.
Yeah, and now you've started Quail Springs, which is a 450-acre permaculture farm and retreat center. And the first question I have for you today is, how do you do it all?
Well, thank you, Jill, and it's nice to be here with you today. And it's interesting how one's life's journey and path unfolds. And I know that a lot of the work that has taken place over these last years has evolved from a commitment to wanting to share the natural world with children, and in that also that help unlock the natural part of a child's self in the sharing of the natural world, so that they're seeing a little bit of the natural world in themselves. And that began years ago when Cindy and I, about 15 years ago actually, when we started working with autistic youth up in Northern California, and we started doing various adventures in nature with autistic kids. And that led us to a lot of understandings that were, there's a fire in our youth of saying, oh, we want to change the world and we want to bring these beautiful things to the world. But then there's that reality of going through failure after failure and having a little bit of experience with success as well. And then in that learning journey, it builds upon itself to one thing to another, and that's led us to Santa Barbara and work with Transition House, which was amazing. 6 years that I worked there, and was working with the youth there, and it formulated from seeing what was going on in the world, because I realized for me, I was one of those fortunate kids that was able to go out and walk out my door and be on a trail near a stream and up in the redwoods outside of Santa Cruz, a little town called Felton. And I thought that's how all kids were raised, that they got to go out, and I didn't watch TV that much, and I didn't spend time doing much other than being out, chasing frogs and, looking at the steelhead running up the stream, which it still did at that point, and getting into trouble, finding caves, and it just was such a wonderful childhood. And as I saw a lot of kids, especially working at Transition House, who had never been off the concrete, not once in their life, and literally 14-year-old kids who had been in town, and the city parks were the only thing that they'd experienced that were part of the natural world, and coupled with that was seeing then also how kids were, how there was like a vitality lost in their eyes. And it's hard to explain, but I think you know what I mean. There was something not happening there with the vitality that the kids were approaching life with. And I knew that it related to something to that, that childhood not being surrounded by the myriad teachings of nature. And so Cindy and I just started to change that with what we could by getting kids out and knowing that nature was is an amazing mentor and offers us just such tools to become good human beings and understand our roles and our gifts and how they play out in the world in a healthy way, whether you live in nature around it very much. Having experiences there open up a world of understanding and a world of learning processes that you don't get anywhere else. So that was the impetus, and it has spread to the work with Wilderness Youth Project over the last 7 years, and as we did more and more of these youth programs out in nature, we realized that there is a piece of the work that we really needed to root into the ground, and that's about understanding what sustains us, because I believe that's where culture comes from. That a group of people who all know where what sustains them comes from, and they honor those things deeply, is the place that the seeds of culture germinate in. It's that fertile humus that allows culture to bloom. And I was realizing that in my own life there's so many things I'm not close with, and so that movement from working with the kids to then rooting it into a place which is this land called Quail Springs. So we'll get kids who we take for the very first time. We'll take them on a creek walk, and they can hardly walk. It's bizarre. It's like they're, they run fine on a track or on a sidewalk, but you get them on a stream, and there was so much variable that their body and their sensory apparatus, their awareness is so low with their body and their mind awareness, their spirit awareness, and their body movement, their kind of kinesthetic ability to mesh those two things is not present because they don't have experience out there swinging from trees like most kids do. And did, I should say, yeah. And so it's been the kind of the core part of what we've been trying to put together is just simple. It's very simple. There's no rocket science here, that's for sure. It's just about letting nature be a mentor, letting nature's diversity come in through the sensory apparatus and actually cause the shifts. It's very little that I'm doing, or Cindy, or any of the other counselors that have worked through Wilderness Youth Project and now out at Quail Springs. We're just basically, it's time in nature, and the shifts happen. We have had kids that people have said, there's nowhere else for this child to go. And they've tried all these programs, and for some reason something unlocks with us. What are you guys doing? What's the magic? Can we validate it through scientific research? And it's like, well, it's very simple. We spend a lot of time outside. It's just that simple.
It sounds like the kids too, they're just like you're saying, they're remembering. It's a part of them that they've never been exposed to, and it's kind of just a natural process. And what were their reactions, some of the reactions that the kids would have?
One of the things that we have found in experience, and I have found in my experiences, is that there's a part of the Western education system and the precepts that a lot of parents carry, that that actually extend childhood beyond what I believe is healthy. I like looking at cultures that are intact and have been intact. Kids that are 7 years old, 8 years old are wielding machetes and gathering firewood, and they're doing things that are valuable to their community. And I find that becomes a key element in shifting a child's behaviors into being community-minded, to being self-supporting in many ways. It's not about being where they're paying their own rent. It's not about that, but being supporting of who they are. So gaining that sense of self-reliance, and also that word self-esteem comes up. But it's more than that. It's a sense of integrity with place, like knowing that I have a place in the world, and it's unique to me, but it's also part of a bigger picture. And so seeing that with kids, I can see it coming and blossoming up with their time out doing things that are beyond what a 7 or 8 year old would usually get exposed to in town, where they're really taught to be children and continue to be children. That you hear a lot of stories of parents saying, "Oh, I don't want my child to grow up too soon." And I think that the exact opposite is happening, where they're growing up so, we have 20-year-old adolescents, happening, and it's a product of this Western syndrome. So what we see with kids is this correlation with doing things that are meaningful and relevant to the community around them and to their survival, to the sustenance of their survival and the survival of a community. So that, for example, we do this one activity with the kids to start the process of that. Just like I'll go to a school and share this with with a group of children, and what we'll do, and all the teachers are horrified when I first present it.
That's always a good sign.
Get everybody just a little off kilter. You bring everybody to the edge a little bit. And I believe that the edge is where new energy enters a system, so I'm constantly trying to move things to the edge, and then allowing that flow to come in, and then a feedback loop to happen between the center and the edge. So I'll go into a classroom, and I'll do this activity. I say, we're going to hunt today. And they're, oh my God, not hunting. And what we'll do is we'll set up stumps out on the school field, and we'll bring a bunch of throwing sticks. And throwing sticks are actually one of the oldest forms. Like a boomerang is a hunting stick. And it's something that all people, it's another one of those things that is in our DNA memory, our ancestral memories, that of having to go out and hunt for our food in various ways. And throwing a stick, it's hard pressed to find a kid that doesn't like throwing a stick. So there's things that kids do all over the world that relate back to survival that is inherent amongst all children. And that's the way we reach kids, is we tap into those things. So I'll go in, I'll line up the stumps, and we'll say, okay, everybody line up in one line about 20 feet back, 30 feet back, and everybody will line up, and one at a time we'll throw each our stick. And the kids are just, they're wanting to throw them so bad, but we do it one at a time. There's a pace, there's if we all throw our sticks at once, then everything will get scared out there. And so we say, this is, first off, everybody throw a stick, and they throw the stick, and a couple kids may hit something, but then most of the time there's not even that. And I say, okay, let's figure this out now. So let's pretend that these various stumps, that these ones over here are rabbits, and rabbits are very good eating, and just picture that they're food that you're going to need to eat, and that's a deer over there, and we put these different animals we embody that in each of these stumps, and the kids go through and they double, triple the ability of that. And then we say the next round, they go out there, they pick it up, and that time we have them do an honoring of the animal that they killed. So what they do is they go out there, because it's my belief that if you take an animal's life, you're responsible for its spirit. And it's a way of stewardship. It's a way of thinking of stewardship. It's not an abstract mythological way of doing that, but it's saying, I am going to use the energy of your life in my life in a good way. And I'm acknowledging you for giving your life. And it's just an acknowledgement, because you can't live without killing. Whether it be a carrot, whether it be, a deer. And so then the next round, everybody lines up, and the kitty meows.
I can relate to this.
I love it. I love interviews where there's cats around. And I say, okay, now you're hunting the deer and the rabbit again, and now everybody, who here has a grandmother? And everybody raises their hands. Who has a baby brother or cousin? And they're like, oh, I said, they're not able to go out hunting, and you're the one who's going to go and hunt for them, and you're going to bring meat back so that they can survive. And literally it triples the amount that hits, just from the need of that. And so then we go to the next round, and we say, now we got to get through winter. And we talk about that, and we do the next round, and they go out and they say that. And then we come back and I say, you know what, let's try something. All the, like people like Michael Jordan, the basketball player, everybody, I know who that is, and talk about, and doctors, performing artists, talk about this idea of seeing something happen before it happens, to intentionalize something, to make it alive in your mind and your heart, and before you take action, so that you see it before you're creating it before you. And that's what Michael Jordan says before he shoots. He pictures it all happening before he releases. And it creates a pathway I talk about with the kids. You help to open a path for that thing to happen. And so we talk about that, and then one by one they do that. And again, doubles what they just did. So then we say, okay, let's try this. What if Juan over here on the end, and Julie next to him, that each person's doing it one on another. What if we all picture for them doing it and intentionalizing it for them? And again, we double what it is. And by that time, we counted up all the deer and rabbits, and we had enough to get the whole village through winter. And then we talk about, well, where else can you use these skills? Because there's a lot of deep understandings and teachings, and basically we could go a whole week with kids on just that one teaching bundle. There's so many rich depths to it. So what you see with kids is through need, you see this engaging that happens that I don't see a lot out in the world. They're in the present moment. You go out tracking a cougar with kids, and they are not thinking about the future. They're not thinking about the past. They're thinking about the bird alarms that are going off and what's occurring all around you, to where you need to be present with it. And so there's a lot that we see. There's a lot of responses that we have. We've had kids, when we first started at Transition House, would come back because we would teach them shelter, fire, water, food, basic sustenance stuff. That Wilderness Youth Project teaches this basic survival stuff so that kids can really see what it takes to sustain them. And in that learning, they go back with a confidence and a resourcefulness where we had kids come back into the Transition House saying, "Mom, we don't have to live here anymore. I can make a debris head in the hills," and just how sweet that is, of the empowerment that happens in that. And also the humility that happens in that, because it also, there's a sense of then needing to also realize how simple it is to live. And that's part of the teaching as well. So as we moved into developing Quail Springs, which is a separate nonprofit, it is about then looking at sustenance, not from the survival skills, the basic skills, but looking at it then from using a modern context of sustainability. And how do you do natural building? How do you look at patterns on the landscape to eventually provide a vitality to a landscape that exceeds what you're drawing from it? And kids get it. There's something hopeful about that. They look at the news every day. They look at the newspapers and they see, we start talking about global warming with kids, they just shut off. There's such an overload right now, and it's such a, we are a generation, my being 40 years old, that the generation I'm in right now and my parents' generation and their parents' generation are basically the generation that fed their children by starving their grandchildren. And the kids now are just, it just wells up. There's a hopelessness. And so that's where, if you can show kids how you can restore a watershed, like the watershed Quail Springs is on. We were restoring this old cattle ranch was there, and even in 2 years that we've been there, the restoration process of that has brought so much hope to me, just seeing this, but to see these kids working on this and being able to see something tangible happen on the earth where there's going to be more water flowing for people to drink, for animals to drink, for plants to grow, for shade trees, for bears. And it's real and it's hopeful and it's aligning with their old ancestral memories too. So it's just bringing these things together.
Wonderful gift to give to kids, because I do agree with you. I think a lot of them are angry and hopeless, and to show them ways that they can contribute in making it better, it's very powerful.
There's another deep teaching that we do with kids, which is about the natural world is also in them. And so you learn how to steward a watershed. You're learning aspects of how you're stewarding the natural parts of yourself, that there's this indigenous part of you, this indigenosity that's hidden inside of you now, that's gone into hiding, while all of this stuff that tries to destroy things that are wild, it's a process of helping to unlock that and create a place where the natural part of yourself can walk on its own fruition into your life. And there's been you look at the Western movement, the history of the Western movement, and it's been a series of indigenosities killed along the way and enslaved and domesticated. And there's old things built into our bones and our language that relate to, the dirty nomad, those wild gypsies. Those are things that you don't want in your life, and that was part of the domestication process that is in all of our ancestries. Even if you're a recent native, big N native bloodline to this land here, you still have a domesticity that has happened to you here, the effects of it. And so part of it is understanding, one, that we're a myriad compilation of indigenosities, and that telling kids about that, being a white kid, being a black kid, those are all just words of hate. They're used to separate people, and to understand that the world is not made up of indigenous people and non-indigenous people. It's made up of people that have had it squandered at different times of their histories. And so doing that condolence work compiled with time and nature is probably, it's the most healing thing that we've been able to find. And because there's that healing of that, or it's not even a healing, and it's not an ascending above, but it's a metabolizing. It's actually chewing at it. Yeah, it's like pulling it up and not to let it go. You're not wanting to let it go either, because it's a part of who you are, and you can't do that. It's impossible, I believe.
I think it's needed now too. Yes. I think all of us, we need to bring that forth.
Yeah, and it's like giving them the tooth and the muscle to be able to chomp away at it, bring it in and break it down into the humus that'll allow them to plant a flower that can sprout from it, So it's not something to avoid, which is so much. That avoidance comes out in so much of the behaviors of all of us. I have it in my own life too. And so as we address those things with kids generally around the fire, around doing vision fasting, through doing one-on-one mentoring, through doing it in our own lives, so they ask us, what are you doing? Why are those tears coming and dropping on the earth right now from your eyes? And we explain to them that, for me to really praise you, I need to also go through my grief, because it's that same muscle that brings both, And so we're constantly trying to do that in ways that are very subtle too, because that's how villages work. Things are very subtle. Things are done in a long term, and there's no quick fix. There's no 40-hour program that your kid will then be condoled and their gifts will come out and they'll be natural beings. It's a lifetime journey, and it's so key that the adults around them are on the same journey. Not the same journey as their kid, but on a journey of condolence, and on a journey of openness, and on a journey of trying to uncover their natural inherent gifts. Our first learning is an arterial echo in our heart from our mother's heartbeat. We mimic our mother's heartbeat as our first learning. And I talk about that with parents, about how they will watch what you do and they will follow what you do. They will follow what I do because I'm bigger, and I represent something of being, I've made it more years, and so they'll look at you and say, oh, that's how I live and survive. And so that environment, that sensory input that happens as an adult through mostly mimicry is huge. So working with just the kids, we found didn't work as well. We had to involve the families, always involve the families. So wherever we're able to draw the families into our work, we do. Quail Springs, this summer, we are doing a 3-week intensive, what we're calling apprenticeship program.
Is that on? I like that word. My computer said there was no such word on spell check. I said add. I added it to the dictionary.
I'm glad. Thank you. I was at a place called Arcosante in Arizona, and I was just walking around there with my daughter and my honey Cindy, and we were walking through, and they made all these wind chimes, and there were young people there learning how to make these wind chimes and different artisan type things that reminded me of an apprenticeship program, which is very focused on particular skill, learning a skill set that usually evolves vocation in some way. And then I was thinking about the mentoring that we've done, and it just like, apprenticeship, but I have to put it in quotes everywhere. Otherwise people are like, oh, you have a misspelled word, so the apprenticeship program is a 3-week, journey that begins as a 3-week journey. So what we're trying to do is find, we're opening to 13 to 17-year-old kids. Sometimes it depends, at 18 we would accept too, just depending. Very small group that will be living on the farm up at Quail Springs, working the farm day to day, doing all of the types of activities involved in managing a permaculture farm and getting it started, because we're so new at this. We have only 2 years under our belt up there, and So yet we've had over 200 volunteers come out and help us. So it is amazing. And so kids will get a chance to get hands-on experience in natural building using cob, using straw bale. Like this weekend, we're actually doing a hybrid composting toilet building process where we're mixing the sandbags that Nadir Khalili, I think is his name, developed at Cal Earth with straw bale and cob. We're mixing all three to build this composting toilet system. So the kids are immersed in it. They're in a low water usage environment, in an arid environment, where they're actually learning about how the energy systems of their daily life are played out on the ground. And they're also learning permaculture techniques and the thousands of things that infinite things that relates to, and really learning pattern recognition in relation to how you live your life to landscape and energy orders. Like, wow.
I was going to ask you, what is that energy orders?
Looking at, let's say the chairs you and I are sitting on, that looking at, well, what was the energy cost of that? And so you can't just look at the rattan that's there and say, okay, well, that cost so much water. Where did the water come from? So you would need to know the field that it was grown, because maybe the field had to be pumped by diesel water pumps. And then the story then increases energy of then how much did it take to harvest it, and how many calories did that take for the person to actually harvest this, and then to make it, and then what tools were made, and then what tools were made to help to put that together, and then how far did it have to travel. Now that's a huge one, especially relating to food, and showing kids. A lot of kids have never eaten a meal that was sitting in the very place where it was grown, and that's a whole different relationship to the earth as well, is where not knowing that the leather on your shoes came from an animal. And a lot of kids don't know that. They don't know where cows come from. They don't know how they live. They wouldn't know what they look like. A lot of inner city kids that we get. So having a chance to be involved in that and hands-on experience, and then wrapping that around the mentoring culture that we're wrapping the mentoring culture around that. So there's a lot of work that we do around reflection. So kids don't get a lot of time to reflect in a very quiet space, and so we do this routine called the sit spot, and kids go out, have a special area that they find that's their spot the whole time they're there, and they go there every day, and they watch sunrises and sunsets, and they get to know the birds that are right there, but not just that's a towhee, but that's Bob the towhee, or Jackie the towhee, and they live there near where I am, and they develop a relationship with that this isn't just a Great Basin sage, but this is the Great Basin sage that when the wind blows from the east, I get a whiff of it right there, and I lean back, and there's a bee that has a nest nearby there, a native bee, and then there's this this wood rat that lives over in this little scrub oak right here, and this wood rat I've named Georgie, and all of a sudden the world they have a relationship with, rather than it being an abstract wall of green. And then you couple that with the farming and the sustenance, and they get this 3-week worldview shifting that'll happen. And so we're just opening this up to our first 12 kids.
They get to find their place in the world.
Yeah, and they get hands-on vocational experience in natural building and permaculture. One of the fastest, I believe, the fastest growing vocations out here right now, and out of sheer need of things going on in the world. They're where you have old farms that have been salted over. Even in the Quail Valley, you're seeing a lot of that now, where these farms are basically going to be laid to waste, and then they're going to come in and do subdivisions. And I believe, that's my belief. And but you see the salting happen, and huge truckloads of soil brought in every year to supplement the black gold. They call it black gold from Nevada, from composted sewage from Las Vegas that gets trucked in by the truckload to the Quail Valley, because they destroy topsoil every year. So part of it is kids get hands-on experience in doing agriculture-based work that builds soil. And you talk about sustainability. It's not sustainable if you're not building the soil. That's where the diversity needs to be, is in the soil, and So we do that, and the kids get a chance to just be in it. They're building houses, they're growing food. There's nothing abstract about it. It's stuff that is used by the community, it's needed by the community, and it's real. And it's, they're 13, 14 years old, and they get a chance to do something that is contributing to a time beyond their own even. And there's something very hopeful in that. It's also contributing to their own time, but when you're contributing to a time beyond your own, there's something that it gives you purpose. That's well said. It gives you purpose, and having purpose means you're not going to go out and just destroy everything around you, which a lot of young people do, a lot of old people do, where you end up, through not having a relationship with purpose and vision for your own life, you end up moving around in a world without much awareness of your impact and how your particular gifts can best serve the world. And in that, there's so much that happens, and so much depression, and depression ungrieved. If grief gets to a place where it's no longer processed and it turns to depression will eventually turn to war. Either war on yourself and suicide, or a slow suicide. I meet a lot of people who are on their deathbed realizing they've been doing a slow suicide for years, and they're just like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done with my life? And it is too late, when they have a week left. And it's a sad story, but I had a similar story with my grandpa where that happened when I was 14, and it changed my life. He was a wild man, and a fisherman and a trucker, and he would travel all over the world, and he ended up deciding to settle down so his family would have stability. There's that word, stability. And the way his family looked at stability was that he would need to do an office job that was 9 to 5, and they would know how much money they were going to get, and they would know when the vacations were, and that he would have this desk job for the 20 years that he had, 25 years before he was ready to retire. And the promise was then, when he retired, they would do, him and my grandma, they would take a trip around the world, and they would buy a round the world ticket, and they would spend 10 years traveling or 5 years traveling. So that's the compromise he made, and he made it. The way I understood it is he made it against his best judgment, his purpose, and became an alcoholic during that time as well. He drowned. It was a coping thing as well as trying to drown. He was drowning the grief, and it got really bad. But he ended up. They had a retirement party for him. His ticket was leaving. Him and my grandma were 4 days away from leaving on this round the world ticket. They were on their way to Tahiti, and the next day he went back to clean out his desk at his office, and he keeled over dead of a heart attack right there. And my grandma never recovered from that either, just the grief of that and the feeling of that. But as a 14-year-old kid, seeing that happen, it affected me hugely. It affected my dad and mom hugely too. Their whole life shifted at that point, where they were like, oh my God, we can't have this happen to me. There's more to life than this. And there's a yeah, and there's a when we were starting Wilderness Youth Project, and we were at Transition House, and Transition House was very, as you know, is a very wonderful mainstream now organization in town that does important work here in town, and it was a very secure job, and I had been working there for years, and well paid for someone who lives like I do, right? Other people would go, you live on what? So I was out with a friend named Carl Wright, who is the man who started the Natural Cafe. He's very, very close dear friend of mine, him and his wife Johanna. And we were out, and we used to do these meetings we'd do our meetings out, and so we would go out on kayaks and kayak around, and we would talk about stuff and about life and different things. And I was telling him how, because we'd been doing for a couple of years these adventure programs, and now I knew there was all these other organizations that wanted to have us work with their kids, that I needed to start this organization, but I have no money, I have no, we have no office, we have no place, no place out in the mountains to go to. I had a list of reasons why I couldn't, and there was no stability for my family. That was a word that came up. And we just paddled for a while, and it was quiet. And he said, after about 10 minutes, he said, you have to think about it like this. He said that there's this wall that you can't see out around. And you know that there's the answer for what the things you need are up around the corner. But you're holding on to this lamppost here. And the only way to get there is you got to let go of the lamppost. And the lamppost is you just went right back over the list of things that I had to do, that I had just said that are wise I couldn't. And he said, that's the lamppost. And he says, as soon as you let go of that and you walk over and look around the corner, you'll see then where you need to go. And the doors that are open to you around the corner from here that you can't see will open. But if you never let go, you'll always stay here and you always see the frame of that door. And that's where the alcoholism comes into, that's where the depression comes into. And I said, well, so what is the letting go? He said, go in tomorrow and give your notice at Transition House. Do it tomorrow. And I was like, gulp, And so I stayed up all night. I talked to my honey, Cindy, and we talked and talked and talked. And pretty soon the sun came up. And I went to work that morning, and I went in and talked to the director, Jill Cloutier, who's an amazing woman, and I gave a long notice, 3 months notice, because there was a lot that I was involved in, and she totally supported me, and all the staff there did. And 2 weeks later, there was still not knowing how anything is going to happen, penniless, still, and knowing
my big salary is going to be gone.
And knowing we needed insurance and all of these different things to work with different organizations that we, they're entrusting their kids with us. And they had requirements, certain things, that we needed, and transportation and all of that. And we needed it like $25,000 to get going. And we're just like, well, we still don't have anything. Well, there was a volunteer who was working in the kids programs after school, and he said, the kids have been telling a lot of stories about their journeys with you. What are you doing with that? And so I shared and said, oh, well, I've given my notice, and this is what I want to do. He said, well, you should go talk to my parents. And I'm just like, I'll talk to anybody. Anybody will listen, I'll talk. I just need guidance, and I need advice, and I need support, in this. And a coalition of people that believed in the work that we were trying to do. Because I knew that doing it alone would be eventually another lamppost that I'd hold on to. And so it was really interesting, because I went down there to Carpinteria, and his parents were there, and I sat with them. They said, so tell us what you're doing. And they said a few things that their son had told them, and then I shared the story and a couple stories of the kids and stuff. They said, okay, enough stories. What do you need? Very straightforward people. And I said, and I'm like, I need $25,000. $25,000, And they looked at each other, and they whispered in each other's ear. They said, okay, you got it. And I'm just like, I'm shocked, and I'm feeling for drool on my, like I've gone dumbfounded, and I'm drooling on their carpet. They said, what else? And all of a sudden that list comes up. And I'm like, oh, well, we don't have an office space, And they're like, we're just whispering in each other's ear. And then they're like, okay, we own this. There's an office condo. We own this. And we have an extra room here. And they showed us, and they said, would this do? And we're like, yes, And they said, for 2 years, we'll pay all your utilities. And you can be here to get started. And we'll have it cleared out Monday morning. And this was like a Thursday or a Wednesday. So then we sit back down, and I'm just like, oh, God, that's amazing. They're like, what else? And I'm like, what else? I said, well, actually, we're looking for a place out in the wilderness that we could have as a base camp. And we're trying to find something back. They said, well, we have this small cabin on 160 acres about an hour and a half from here in the backcountry up behind Ojai in the Quail Valley, which is the neighboring property, the property that we just bought. He pulls out a set of keys and hands us the keys. And he says, I'll have my son take you out there. You can use it whenever you want. And he said, you can take kids out there. So I come back Monday morning, and there's nothing's in the office but a $25,000 check pinned to the wall. And I just remember, I just was like, I just sobbed. I just sobbed. And I called Carl and told him, how grateful I was for his advice. to this day, I always credit him with the story, the creation story of Wilderness Youth Project. And
well, the doors open so quickly. It was probably like being on a roller coaster ride.
yeah, and there's an aspect of what it is that is your path that you need to be doing, and if you walk on it, because there's a lot of really good things you can do. There are so many. It's infinite. But doing what you're supposed to be doing doesn't always even feel good. Sometimes it does, It feels good on the deepest parts of you, in those places that are, where your blood's being formed. That's where it feels good. But there are times where things are not easy, and that's when a lot of people verge away from what they're supposed to be doing, because there's another lamppost to grab onto, and it's security and safety. And one of my old teachers has said, security and safety are euphemisms for death. And so it's stuck with me as well. And that's a part of what my grandpa taught me too. So it has taken off from there. And that same family has purchased the land for us, which was the neighboring 450 acres. So we did programs there for about 7 years before the land came.
We're really called there almost.
Yeah, in the Cuyama Valley. Amazing place that's remained hidden. A lot of people live here. We are, from where we're sitting in downtown Santa Barbara, we are 32 miles from our ranch. As the crow flies, as the raven hovers, as the condor cruises. It's a pinyon juniper woodland, which is, people see pictures of it and they say, oh, that's New Mexico, I'm sure of it. That's New Mexico. Oh, no, or Eastern Arizona, maybe at the base of the White Mountains in Eastern Arizona, And I'm like, nope, that's in Southern California, because nobody can believe that that's what it is. It's this little isolated pinyon juniper woodland, and it is just beautiful. And we have a spring on the land that feeds us year-round water. That we're able to take a little bit out of the regular flow of that to run the farm that we're setting up. And we at the Quail Springs farm, we call it a learning oasis and permaculture farm. Our hope is to develop long-term relationships with people, and ongoing relationships where the people that come there can develop with the land there. Culture, I believe, comes from the land. It is of the land. And so that's part of what this is set up to do. And so we have various places to interface, to come and do that relationship building. We have service learning weekends that you can see on our website, our calendar section there. And we do everything from working on building gabions for the, slow the erosion in there, to doing natural building and working with clay on the walls, the finished clays. We're doing a cob workshop. We're doing a composting toilet system for large groups, where we have a garden planting, food forest planting weekend, and those are free. People can come. All you have to do is just bring some food and a willingness to work and share. And people bring music instruments and their kids, and it's this really neat kind of community gathering that happens around building something for time beyond our own. That's our focus, is we're doing something. We're not just coming to party. There is those times where you need to feast, and you need to give back, and you need to hamblecha, they say, or you need to wopila, or give thanks through giving offerings, giving away everything you own, so to speak. And so we do those as well.
Is Quail Springs an eco-village? Is it going to be something where people can sign up and move in? Or is it where it's going to be your core group and then you're holding spaces for people to gather?
Yeah, I'm not answering that question for several reasons. And one of them is that we're moving really slow with our relationship building with people. And we're also realizing that there's a lot of issues relating to governmental agencies around the word village, eco-village, and neighbors and different things. So right now we're a learning oasis, and there are people that move in and out with us. We have people weekly contacting us wanting to live there, because there's this energy moving, and it's very neat. They are, and yet that's something that needs to be approached slowly. I see ads in Permaculture Activist and Hope Dance and different places where people are they're advertising for community members. And I first off believe that I don't believe in intentional community, but what I do believe is that community comes from that need issue that I was talking about. You need each other. When you need each other and you understand how you need each other and why you need each other, to some extent, then a community will start coming from it. And so there is something really special moving there, and I don't know what will end up happening. A lot of it's going to depend on where things move on the earth. I think as more and more things bind up in a system that isn't sustainable, that there will be an unlocking by the authorities that have been guided by profit-making industries. That, you know, the universal building codes are designed, they're built by people in a committee of industry professionals that benefit from certain laws being passed in steel, metal, insulation, all these different types of really inefficient building things, chemically toxic homes that aren't benefiting people but make profit. They are being thrust upon people to do. So as those get relaxed, the idea of a village expanding out of people who have relationship with the place, I could see something happening years and years down, maybe even beyond my life. I don't know. But we do have people come in and say, you know what, I would like to experience this and learn some things on how to do this in my own canyon, so to speak. And so there's a internship availabilities of people to come themselves or with their family and come out and spend time with us for 3 months, you know, a definitive season or 2 seasons.
And then it spreads.
Yes.
Then it's not concentrated in one area, but they can take it out and then create.
Yeah, and we just, right now there's very few people living there. There's 2 couples, and my daughter's out there as well. And then there's been, you know, at times 3 couples, and there's been several interns, but then there's this constant flow of people to all of our programs that happen.
I was going to say, maybe that helps you focus on the work that you're doing, because I interviewed Diana Leaf Christian, the editor of Communities Magazine, and she said that a lot of, when you're in an eco-village or intentional community, a lot of your time is taken up with process work, you know, the conflict resolution and all of that.
Yeah, and it's tricky when in a culture that hasn't, where our grandchildren or our great-grandparents are not growing up as children together. There's a different type of way that things get resolved when you grow up and you become the great-grandparent of a village that you grew up in, and the relationship that you have with that place. There's a lot of unseen work that happens by the elders in villages that I understand, intact villages. There is so much, we call it fixing from the eaves, because they sit under the eaves in their rockers and they send out things into the village that help to fix stuff, or they see a conflict arising and they head it off before anybody else is seeing it. And one of the interviews I do on our Mentoring for Peace website is with Chief Jake Swamp, and he talks about, you know, he's like, Warren, you don't be so hard on yourself. It takes 200 years to get a village intact. 200 years is his belief.
Here in the U.S., we think in terms of like a year.
Yeah, right. We're just, you know, the U.S. is 200 years. Yeah. Just and a few, you know, and some change, you know, and
this village still isn't intact.
Yeah, right. And it's been unwound in the process of the 200 years. So now the people that are saying, you know what, I hear stories of what this is like. I have a feeling of resonance that I can't do this alone. I need to be interdependent with other people. There's something about that feeds humanity, that feeds the earth around you. Being interdependent with other people helps you to be a better steward of the earth, I believe. And having that feeling, it's like we're all trying to like figure out, well, then how do you do it? And it's an approach that we can't be too hard on ourselves with, but move slowly in. Because if you do it without the relationship building and say, oh, we're a village, that's what you end up doing, is processing all of the Western muck that's built into our worldviews that is unhealthy in that way, and also misconceptions about what intact villages look like. Because you go into villages that aren't been mowed over and imperialized, which are very few left, very, very few left. What you see isn't acceptable a lot by Western standards. You know, how people are and different things. There's a lot of, and it's different for every canyon. That's the beauty of it. You know, you see hear stories of the native Hawaiians and how they would be as opposed to some of the tribes in Senegal. You know, it's like, when you ask that, it's a big question for me, because I could just say, yeah, we hope this to be an eco-village and then getting 1,000 calls, but it's a slow process. As I said, though, we've had over 200 people come out and volunteer on all sorts of different things all over the place, and 170 just on the building.
I also wanted to ask your opinion on, do you have hope for the future? What is your feeling about our future?
Yeah.
You know, with our depleted resources and climate change and all of that, what do you have hope in?
For me, the hope is each child that can awaken from this grayness that is surrounding the Western culture, the Western syndrome, awaken from that to see the natural world, to see how they can move naturally in a lot of times unnatural places, but to move naturally where they're a wild animal in the streets. But that wildness isn't about like breaking windows and stealing things. It's about being wild in the moment of being able to have awareness of the things going on around you, having as I knock a cup off, that's really funny. How's that for apropos? Being able to have the quickness of mind of the coyote and being able to see where things need to be done is a wildness. To be able to anticipate the patterns and the exchange of patterns that are going on, and enough that you can actually help people get into their naturalness more and live their vision more by the way you move in yours. It's a wildness that can be done anywhere. It's a way of seeing the world for the deaths and for our dependence upon it, and then for the life that comes out of that death. That's the hopefulness for me. It's that knowing that I can bring change. And I know I can.
You are.
You can. And I know everybody listening can as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. I appreciate you having me here today, and for anybody who might be listening, I appreciate you spending the time and your vital life energy and being able to take a few moments out of your life to hear my words, and I offer them in humility, and gratitude.
You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. For more information or to hear our other podcasts or interviews, visit www.sustainableworldradio.com. Sustainable World Radio is produced by Jill Cloutier. Music by Dana Lyons. Thanks for listening.